おほほ打つな。
宮本、もう聞かない。ゼルダをリメイクさせてください。
私はあなたを許可することはできません。最近のゲーマーはくすんだ泣き言を言う赤ちゃんです。オリジナルのゼルダは彼らにとって非常に難しいです。簡単符。
あなたは私に選択の余地はありません、宮本くん。
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
And that's how the Oracle games were born. See, a producer from Capcom by the name of Yoshiko Okamoto approached Miyamoto about remaking Zelda 1 in the same style as Link's Awakening. Miyamoto said no, so Okamoto said if Nintendo didn't want to do it, then he would just make the game himself over at Capcom but change the name and the characters. The absolute balls on this gentleman to threaten Miyamoto. Lucky for him, it worked out, and Miyamoto offered Okamoto the chance to make a new Zelda adventure, and that is the origin of the Oracle games. Initially, they wanted to do a trilogy, each game featuring one of the 3 goddesses, Seasons with Din, Ages with Nehru, and the 3rd title with Furore, but ultimately the 3rd game was scrapped since Furore was a little bit of a weirdo and was probably a vegan. So instead they just stuffed her inside the Mako tree and made her the keeper of secrets. Basically, 3 games was a little overambitious. Each one was meant to be a follow-up to the last, and the plan was to release each one a few months apart, but they wanted them to also be playable in any order using a link code system, and unfortunately, it was just too challenging to pull off. The link code thing is pretty neat in theory. Once you complete one Oracle adventure, you could link it to the next and unlock a secret true ending. Seasons and Ages at first glance look like they were given the Pokemon treatment, but the big difference is, these are all the same game. And these are 2 completely different adventures with unique dungeons, bosses, characters, soundtracks, storylines, items, overworld maps, and even difficulty. Oracle of Ages is a puzzle-focused adventure with cakewalk bosses and corn maze dungeons, and Oracle of Seasons is a journey through the 7 circles of hell. Basically, Seasons is hard as balls, and Ages is pretty chill for the most part. Not to say Ages doesn't have its challenges, a few later parts made me want to cry, but I found Seasons especially difficult. I've always felt like these older Zelda games were challenging enough from the controls, unlike a Souls game where it feels like I can master and work together with the controls to overcome a challenge. Top-down Zelda games always felt like I was fighting with the controls the entire time. Not to mention, bouncing projectiles and random lunge attacks from enemies are basically impossible to read for me, which just makes things even harder. Also, quick side note, I don't know if it's just me, but it felt like it was way too easy to slip off ledges in this game. It's like any given pit had a black hole in it, so Seasons being a lot more platform heavy with the Rock's Feather made for a lot of falling. Challenging bosses are one thing, but most of my frustration came from what happens when you lose to a boss. Respawning at the dungeon entrance after a game over is old news, but Seasons tended to reset a lot of the puzzles inside of the dungeon. A lot of these puzzles also require that you kill all of the enemies in a room to unlock the way forward, so the majority of the time after trekking all the way back through the dungeon, refighting enemies I had already killed just so I could unlock the way forward, and of course, sucking at it, I would often have pretty low health once I did finally make it back to the boss room. This, and of course the bosses are super difficult, so I ended up repeating this loop time and time again. Einstein once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, but it's fine, they're letting me stay in this cozy room. I also just for some reason can't learn from my mistakes in old school Zelda games, but I don't know what you expect from me. I don't have brain cells. I'm a piece of ravioli. Anyways, I can't even be mad about the puzzles resetting because I'm 90% sure it's not a design choice and just a limitation of the Game Boy Color and its memory capabilities. Besides, I should have known what I was in for with the literal first dungeon of the game having wall masters in it. Well, I live here now. One of the crazies escaped. Can I get some backup? Hey, how did you get out? Seasons is super hard. The whole playthrough I was constantly asking myself, how the f did I beat this as an 8-year-old? Anyways, remember the title of the video? This is a pros and cons list. So for our pros so far, the rent on this dungeon entrance hall is really cheap. The dungeons are intricate and well designed, and the bosses, despite being hard, are all pretty cool. But I have no brain cells, the Game Boy Color also has no brain cells, and you fall off ledges in this game far too often. Oracle of Seasons really shines with its overworld and seasons gimmick. Eventually you obtain the Rod of Seasons, a magic staff that lets you change the weather, more or less. It's a really convenient way to block progress and add some puzzling to the overworld as certain pathways only open up in certain weather conditions. These plants spit you out to gain higher ground, but only in the springtime, and these snowdrifts can show up to help you access certain areas, but only in winter. There's also some animal buddies you can use to traverse certain areas on the map, and an entire underground called Subrosia that you have to frequent constantly throughout your journey to access certain items and areas. Actually, Subrosia is where I had my very first date. Holy f***ing shit, dude, this girl's holding my hand. I gotta say something cool. I can't mess this up. You know what crypto is? So that's a lot of pros right there. The overworld is huge, labyrinthian, and intricately designed. There's a windmill hut. You get adorable animal companions, and the way it all connects to Subrosia is really cool. But to be honest, the labyrinthian design can be a bit of a pain in the ass at times. I definitely had to consult my map fairly often to keep track of where I needed to go, but I far preferred it compared to the overworld in Ages. I think the only thing Oracle of Seasons lacked is a story. Link basically dances with Din, the Oracle of Seasons, and then she gets kidnapped and Impa's all like, "Hey, Link, go save Din. I'll do it for V-Bucks."
#1 victory royale.
The lack of story isn't necessarily a pro or a con, so I've created the prawns category just for this. Alright, maybe that was a bad idea. Oh, never mind, we're good. I think the largest con of them all, however, is the challenge that I mentioned earlier. I personally think the difficulty was a bit of a hindrance. Did you catch that keyword there? Personally, meaning my personal opinion? Or as the Oxford Dictionary states, from someone's personal standpoint or according to their particular nature, in a subjective rather than objective way. Or, stated by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, for oneself, as far as oneself is concerned. Or, according to the Urban Dictionary definition. Never mind, we're not gonna read that one. I just don't look for challenge like this in my Zelda games. Unless the combat is more involved like in more recent titles, then I'd rather my challenge be focused on the puzzling side of things. So for the last few pros, cons, and prawns for Oracle of Seasons, these Gorons are cute as f***. The essence of nature looks like a ballsack. This old man took my money. The challenge was a little much for my own personal preference, and it's a video game. There are only 2 Zelda games I have never completed. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and The Oracle of Ages. This is the first time in this video series that I'm experiencing a Zelda game for the very first time. However, because this game is so similar in style to The Oracle of Seasons, it kinda just feels like one really long game. The overworld is different, we travel between the past and present instead of changing the seasons, and the items and dungeons are all different, but it doesn't feel like I'm playing a separate entry. It's kinda cool that they both create a cohesive experience, and with the link system I mentioned earlier, I'm quite literally just playing an extended Oracle adventure. Because I put the link code in from the end of Seasons when I started Ages, there's been a couple of minor changes like Ricky the Kangaroo remembering who I am, and a couple of extra segments where you save Zelda and stuff. It's nothing really major, but it is kinda neat. Starting the game this way also gives access to secret codes that you can apparently go back into Seasons and use to get items and stuff, but I didn't really want to go back and figure out how it all works since I was done with Seasons already, and it seemed like all it did was give me a couple extra items. The link system was kind of confusing. Even with the guidebook I had, I couldn't figure out exactly how it worked, nor did I really want to. I try and approach all these Zelda games I play as if I was playing them for the first time, and as if I was someone that didn't really know tons about Zelda, so I feel like for the average person, this link system would have just been too confusing to bother figuring out. Anyway, Seasons was a pretty solid game, so more should be a good thing, right? The problem is, Seasons felt long enough on its own, so now playing through Ages, it just feels like a bit of a slog. I'm honestly getting a little burnt out on the Oracle format. In fact, this video up until this point was written before finishing Ages. One rule I always give myself is to complete the game I'm talking about before writing, but in this case, I don't know if Ages has all that much more to offer. I honestly might just call it quits on Ages and move on. One big change I noticed in Ages is it actually has a story that progresses throughout the adventure. This Yu-Gi-Oh! Reject Ralph is a mega simp for Nehru, the Oracle of Ages, and Nehru gets possessed by Velma. No, by Viren, and then Viren uses Nehru to control Queen Ambi to aid the construction of this evil black tower that looms over the land. The gimmick in Ages comes with the Harp of Ages that lets you travel between the past and present versions of the overworld, and it does make for some pretty fantastic puzzles. The map is far less Jim Henson's The Labyrinth from 1986, which is a bit of a bummer, but it makes it a lot easier to remember where to go, and learning both the past and present versions of a busy map like Seasons had would have just been too much anyways. Even with the map as chill as it is, a couple of the later points got a little confusing with all of the time travel. Anyways, more story is definitely welcome, but it did result in a few temporary dead ends. A couple of times I'd progress into the next area I was supposed to be in, I'd be on the right track, but I wouldn't be able to figure out how to progress. I felt like I had missed something, so I'd go back, I'd double check, look around the area again, only to find out I just had to go back the way I came in to trigger a cutscene before I could once again traverse the area. It was a little bit bothersome since it kind of felt like it wasted my time. So as far as pros and cons go, the past and present function is super fun, the story adds some direction to the adventure, and Velma looks like she could step on me and I wouldn't have any complaints. But for cons, the story got kind of in the way of the pacing sometimes, and the map was a tiny bit plain, at least compared to Seasons. One of the biggest pros in Ages is the switch hook item. Basically, it's a hook shot, but instead of pulling you towards an object, it'll actually make you switch places with it. This meant that you could
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
but also use it to move around blocks for puzzles, get enemies out of your way, and pull Viren out of the possessed Queen Ambi to deal damage in a couple of the boss fights. This is easily my favorite item in the Oracle games, and I'm sad it's never made another appearance. Another pro is this dope mustache this guy traded to me for some dumbbells. Apparently he was using it to get girls. Is it working? Damn it. The best part is we trade the cheesy mustache to this guy for a funny joke, and then we tell this funny joke to this kid who is severely depressed.
I'm so depressed. I want to laugh until I forget everything. Then I'd be happy.
I think the kid is still depressed, so I guess I'll just put this interaction in the prawns section. The point is, there's lots of fun interactions with NPCs throughout both of these games, but I enjoyed them more in Ages, so pro for that. Alright, get ready guys, it's time for the biggest con of the Oracle games. This burnt chicken nugget looking motherfucker right here. Late in the game, you get to explore the Goron's home turf, and it's full of minigames. Typically, I don't bother with minigames in Zelda aside from maybe trying them once or twice to see what's up, but no. This Goron dance minigame is not only mandatory to progress, but you have to complete it both in the past and present. Sounds fine enough, but no man, this minigame is single-handedly the hardest challenge in both of the Oracle games. It's a rhythm-based game, but with absolutely no music or tempo to match along to, and the room for error felt basically non-existent. Imagine trying to play Through the Fire and the Flames on Guitar Hero, but with no music. You also have to pay rupees every time you attempt it, so when you inevitably run out of money, you have to go searching for more. I legitimately contemplated just giving up and calling Oracle of Ages a wash at this point. It was that frustrating. But, alas, with much pain and turmoil, I did finally beat it.
Good job, here's your key. You, Goron, you're I hate you. My and my.
So of course, I'm a little hurt from that minigame. Wounded even. And then we get to go meet the Zoras and a whole other annoyance. Link acquires the ability to swim in deep water via the mermaid suit, but along with this suit, the swimming controls completely change. You can't just push the D-pad in the direction you want to go anymore. You now have to tap the D-pad repeatedly to gain momentum as you simultaneously steer Link. You also can't use items in your B button slot when underwater since the dive button is tied to the B button, so we're now limited to only a single item slot in a game where 2 is barely even enough. It's tedious and frustrating for sure, but it's only for a few smaller sections of the game. It'll be fine.
Nope.
So, big cons, the Goron minigame was hell and a half, and the swimming mechanic was tedium at its finest. And so, after those headaches, we finally made our way to the final dungeon. Between the Goron game and the swimming bullshit, I was very much done with these games, and dungeon number 8, the Ancient Tomb, looked like it was gonna be a little bit rough. Turns out, it was my favorite dungeon out of them all. It had the perfect amount of linearity and open exploration, it made great use of Link's toolkit, and it felt pretty unique from all of the other dungeons. I was very pleased with the Ancient Tomb, and it definitely lifted my spirits and gave me hope that the final bosses wouldn't be so bad. Flashback to Seasons quick, an already hard game ended with a disgustingly difficult final boss. The problem was it had a few attacks that were random, and if you happened to pick the wrong direction to evade, then you just had to tank the hit. This was expected as all of the other bosses had been tough as well. Aegis, however, had easy bosses, most of which I only needed an attempt or two to beat, so I fully expected the final boss to be a little bit on the easier side, and up until Viren's final form, they really weren't that bad. The first battle was simple enough if you acted quickly. You just had to use the Siege Shooter to reveal Viren, use the switch hook to RKO her out of Queen Ambi, and then get a quick hit in. She then transforms into this fairy-like form, you fight some Dark Links that mirror your movements, dodge some projectiles, and just mash your sword attack. But the last phase was what really threw me off. In this third battle, she gets 3 different forms. Whatever the hell this is, a spider, and a wasp. The whatever the hell this is form is easy enough to avoid if you stay on your toes and evade directly up, down, left, or right from her. The wasp form was also fairly simple if you space yourself correctly, but the spider was a real headache. You had to time bomb throws to get a stun on her to deal damage, and with how much she moved around, it was real tough getting the timing right. I definitely was getting frustrated with this one, but I think at the end of the day, it was more or less a fair fight, albeit a little bit annoying at times. But of course, we did it and completed the Oracle of Ages. However, we put that link code in from Seasons back when we started this whole adventure, and that unlocks for us the true finale of the Oracle games. A final 2 battles, one with Twinrova and one with Ganon. These 2 fights are the hardest I've experienced while making this video series. I'd be lying if I said I didn't abuse my save states for this one. The first phase of Twinrova requires you to knock the magic spell from one of them into the opposite element. I firmly believe the actual chance of doing this on purpose is maybe like a 1%. I only beat this first fight by pure chance. There was no way I was purposefully knocking these orbs where they needed to go. But we lucked out, I did enough damage, and I quickly saved myself the pain and save stated right before the second phase. Phase 2, the fire half of it specifically, made me want to jump off a bridge. The problem wasn't the boss itself, it was the fact that they also included the ricochet mechanic into this fight. Basically, Fire Twinrova's arena has these little lava puddles, and if you attack while you're too close to one of them, the ricochet just knocks you into them, causing additional pain, suffering, turmoil, anger, frustration, agony, torment, distress, sickness, anxiety, confusion, self-loathing, unrest, nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, and diarrhea. The ice phase, aside from, you know, being on ice, isn't so bad. Your sword can simply knock away the projectiles, and you can use the rock's feather to help change your momentum. But in order to do actual damage, you have to use the Siege Shooter to hit Twinrova after you whack her a bunch, and she's in this stunned half and half form. The Siege Shooter lets you shoot a seed, and then the seed can bounce off walls. It's great for puzzles, hidden switches, teleporting enemies out of your goddamn personal space, but in a boss fight, it causes one incredibly aggravating problem. Obviously, in a boss battle, time is of the essence. Get it? Time is of the essence? Because we've been collecting the essences of time this whole adventure? Oh my... Holy shit, Rav. That was funny. Thanks, intern. You've always got my back. You only have so much room for error when you need to get a hit in on a boss. If you miss your shot with your Siege Shooter, you have to wait until the seed is done bouncing all around before you can attack again. Obviously, losing your chance to deal damage is rough, but on a boss fight with this many lava pools, it kinda just sent me over the edge. And that's why I'm editing this video from this pillow room. As always though, we stuck it out and defeated the Twinrova with a mere heart and a half of health to spare, and all that was left was the final challenge of Ganon.
Bye, have a great day. Wow, I did a no-hit run. That's so crazy. With the nostalgia of sitting at the windmill hut and listening to the theme on repeat aside, I think the Oracle games might actually go pretty low on my list. I feel like they would have been a bit more enjoyable if I didn't play them back to back, but that's kind of the whole point of the Link system, is it not? I think the pair of them start off strong, but have too many frustrations as you get deeper into the games. If there was Link's Awakening style remakes of the Oracle games, then they would probably sit a little bit higher up on my list, but because this Goron pissed me off so much, the Oracle games land themselves in the number 15 slot.
Usually I end with a joke, but the real joke is me trying to work a full-time job and pay my bills, and trying to get these edits out for you guys. These videos take a huge amount of work to produce, and it would mean the world to me if you commented, dropped a like, subscribed, or even shared this video. You could even swing by my Ko-fi page if you feel so obliged. The more I grow on here, the sooner I can dedicate more time to making videos, and I quite literally can't do it without you guys. So for those of you that are new, thanks for stopping in and watching, and for those of you that have been here, I appreciate you always watching and commenting on my videos. You guys know who you are. So once again, thank you so much everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.